DECAY entered early access just a few days ago, and this is a game I've been waiting for.
This is your last safe checkpoint. You still need to reach DECAY 16 base, and the route runs through dangerous
The main reason is
tunnels.
simple.
All
It comes from the
basic
developer
survival
behind
instructions for the wasteland are
ZONA
gathered
Origin,
here.
which is one of my
Study the stands
favorite VR
carefully,
games.
check your equipment and learn how to handle your gear.
So,
Once
when
you're
I heard
ready,
he was working on a
open
new
the sealed
open-world
door and move out
RPG,
into the tunnel.
DECAY immediately
Attention.
went onto my
All
radar.
weapons and supplies will be confiscated upon arrival at the base.
And on paper, it has pretty much everything I'm looking for in a VR game. An open world, exploration, looting, character progression, survival elements, and plenty of places to discover. And here it is. Come here, my dear. A very realistic, meticulously detailed modern weapon, and a wide selection. Basically, the kind of game where you can forget about the main objective for a while, wander off in a random direction, and suddenly realize you've spent 2 hours exploring, collecting stuff, and getting yourself into trouble. In the game, you need to eat to avoid starvation, and you can even cook food. This is exactly the type of VR game I love, and DECAY already looks like something that could easily keep me busy for dozens of hours, and potentially much longer as the game continues to grow. Of course, there is one important thing to keep in mind. DECAY is still in early access, so don't expect a completely finished and polished game yet. There are things that still need work, and some parts will obviously change over time. But even in its current state, the game is already absolutely playable, and there is plenty here to explore and enjoy. And knowing the developer from his previous projects, I'm actually quite optimistic about the early access period. ZONA Origin changed and expanded a lot over time, with new content, mechanics, locations, and improvements being added along the way. I expect something similar with DECAY. There is already a solid foundation here, but I think what we see today is only the beginning. A lot more content and interesting features will probably appear before the full release. Before reaching the main base, you'll have to undergo a short training session. You'll need to navigate through creepy tunnels filled with zombies, but once you reach the base, all your weapons will disappear. And the developer does listen to the community. So if you play the game and have ideas, suggestions, or something you think should be improved, tell him. This is probably the best time to do it, while DECAY is still being actively developed. So, with that out of the way, let's talk a little about the world of DECAY and what exactly is happening here. Now, let's talk about the story and the world of DECAY. The game takes place in a post-apocalyptic world after civilization as we know it has collapsed. What remains is a dangerous, decaying environment filled with abandoned places, hostile creatures, survivors, and traces of the world that existed before everything went wrong. You play as a survivor, trying to find your place in this new reality. And, as you would expect from this kind of open-world RPG, the story is not only about following a main quest from point A to point B. A big part of the experience is simply exploring the world around you. You enter abandoned buildings, search for supplies, find weapons and useful equipment, meet other survivors, take quests, and gradually discover more about what happened to this world. There is always that feeling that something useful, or something dangerous, could be waiting behind the next door or somewhere just beyond the road. And this is where Decay immediately reminded me of what I liked about ZONA Origin. The world itself is part of the story. You are not simply being told what happened. You discover it through locations, abandoned structures, objects, characters, and everything left behind. At the same time, Decay is not just about survival. There is a much larger mystery behind this world, and as you progress, you begin to understand that what happened here, and what is still happening, is much more complicated than it first appears. I don't want to spoil too much, especially because exploration and discovery are such an important part of this game. So instead of explaining everything in advance, let's get into the game itself and see what this world has to offer. One thing I noticed almost immediately is that the guns feel really good. This was already one of the strongest parts of ZONA Origin, and thankfully, Decay keeps that feeling. The weapons have a satisfying sense of weight, aiming feels natural, and shooting is simply enjoyable. Zombies, our first targets. The first ones we encounter are not particularly dangerous. They are slow, relatively easy to deal with, and as long as you keep your distance, they don't pose much of a threat. But visually, they are surprisingly convincing. And this becomes especially noticeable in the dark. During the day, you can look at one of these zombies and think, alright, not exactly the most terrifying enemy in the world. At night, it's a completely different story. When one of them suddenly appears out of the darkness and starts moving toward you, it looks disturbingly real in VR.
Greetings, operator. Welcome to Decay 16. The main terminal is located behind you. Use it to receive combat directives and monitor the current status of active tasks. Make yourself comfortable. As a reminder, for the next 365 days, this bunker is officially recognized as your home. Have a productive shift.
The game begins at your base, so before heading outside, let's take a quick look around. The whole place looks a bit like an old garage or auto repair shop that has been converted into a survivor's home and operational base. And there is actually quite a lot here. You have a shop where you can buy weapons, ammunition, and other equipment. There is a room where you can sleep, a workbench for repairing your weapons, shelves for storing supplies, and plenty of dedicated slots for building your own weapon collection and stockpiling ammunition. There is also a shooting range where you can test your weapons, and at the far end of the base, there is even a kitchen. The shop itself will probably look very familiar if you have played Into the Radius. Weapons and supplies are physically displayed in front of you, and you interact with them directly rather than simply browsing through a traditional menu. But there is an important progression system behind it. You cannot simply earn some money and immediately buy the best gun in the game. Better weapons require higher access levels, and from what I can see, There are at least 16 of them. You increase your progression by completing missions, which reward you with both money and experience. Money lets you buy equipment, while experience moves you further through the game's progression system. And on top of that, DECAY has a separate character skill system. This is something I was very happy to see. ZONA Origin had exploration, weapons, loot, and progression through equipment, but it didn't really have this kind of character development. DECAY goes a step further and gives you actual skills to improve as you progress. For an open-world RPG, that is a big addition, because now progression isn't only about finding or buying a better gun. Your character is developing as well. But before we start worrying about high-level weapons and character builds, we need something to survive our first trip outside. Fortunately, the game doesn't send us out completely empty-handed. Waiting for us at the base are our first two weapons, a pistol and a more powerful weapon chambered in 7.62 by 51. We also get several magazines for them and one box of ammunition for each weapon. There are also two med kits waiting on the shelves. So we grab the guns, magazines, ammunition, and medical supplies. Organize everything we want to take with us, and now we're finally ready. Time to pick up our first missions, leave the safety of the base, and see what is waiting for us outside. Once we leave the base, we finally get our first proper look at the world of DECAY. And it is not a particularly welcoming place. The landscape is covered in sand. Everywhere you look, there are ruined buildings, rusted cars, abandoned shops, cafes, and gas stations, old industrial facilities, and the remains of a world that has clearly been dead for quite some time. There is clearly more going on here than just another zombie apocalypse. And speaking of zombies, they are everywhere. Fortunately, we are not traveling completely alone. A robot accompanies me outside the base, and he is actually quite useful. He scans the surrounding area and helps locate supplies and other useful things. And when something attacks us, he can fight as well. Although he is definitely not immortal. Enemies can damage him, so apparently, I'm not the only one who needs to be careful out here. Exploration itself is already quite rewarding. Some abandoned shops contain a surprising amount of loot. There are cheap everyday items, but there are also more valuable things that can be sold back at the base. And that creates a familiar problem very quickly. Your backpack is fairly large, but it is definitely not infinite. So you have to decide what is actually worth carrying home and what should stay behind. Thankfully, you can check the value of every individual item you find. That makes inventory management much easier. If the backpack starts getting full, you can simply compare prices and decide which pieces of junk are worth sacrificing for something more valuable. And then, somewhere on the horizon, you can see these strange futuristic structures. At this point, I have absolutely no idea what they are, or what their purpose is, but they immediately make the world more interesting. and zombies are definitely not the only thing standing in our way. After traveling a little farther, we encounter something much more dangerous. These are huge mutated flies or wasps, and if you have played Fallout, you will probably recognize the idea immediately. They reminded me a lot of the giant flying insects from those games. Unlike the first zombies, however, these things are a serious problem.
Just let me know if you need any assistance.
They don't even need to get close to you. They can attack from a distance by spitting or shooting some kind of poison. And they can take an absurd amount of ammunition before finally going down. That becomes especially painful this early in the game, when ammunition is still a valuable resource and you don't exactly have hundreds of rounds to waste. So my first encounter with them taught me a very simple lesson. In Decay, just because you can kill something doesn't necessarily mean you should. Before leaving the base, I accepted 3 missions at once. My original idea was to complete all 3 during a single expedition. Whether that is actually going to happen is another question. The distances here seem pretty significant, and after walking around for a while, you quickly start to realize that going somewhere on the map may turn into a proper expedition rather than a short trip around the corner.
Resistance is free.
And I think this is a good place to finish our first look at Decay. The game is still at the very beginning of its early access journey, so there is obviously a lot of work ahead. But even now, I can already see a lot of potential here. The foundation is there, a large world to explore, satisfying weapons, looting, missions, character progression, plenty of things to discover, and that familiar atmosphere I enjoyed so much in ZONA Origin. So I really want to wish the developer good luck with Decay. I hope the game continues to grow, gets more content, more mechanics, more locations, and eventually becomes something truly special. And hopefully, we as players can help with that too, by playing, testing, reporting problems, and sharing our ideas and suggestions while the game is still in development. I'll definitely be following Decay as it evolves, and I'm pretty sure this won't be the last time you see it on this channel. So if you want to see more Decay, more VR games, and more VR adventures in general, subscribe to VRGO. Thanks for watching, good luck out there, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care.